The Missouri River is the longest river in North America, rising in the Rocky Mountains of western Montana. The Missouri flows east and south for 2,341 miles before entering the Mississippi River north of St. Louis, Missouri. The river takes drainage from a sparsely populated, semi-arid watershed of more than 500,000 square miles, which includes parts of 10 U.S. states and 2 Canadian provinces. When combined with the lower Mississippi River, it forms the world's fourth longest river system. For over 12,000 years, people have depended on the Missouri River and its tributaries as a source of sustenance and transportation. More than 10 major groups of Native Americans populated the watershed, most leading a nomadic lifestyle and dependent on enormous buffalo herds that once roamed through the Great Plains. The first Europeans encountered the river in the late 17th century, and the region passed through Spanish and French hands before finally becoming part of the United States through the Louisiana Purchase. The Missouri was long believed to be part of the Northwest Passage, a water route from the Atlantic to the Pacific, but when Lewis and Clark became the first to travel the river's entire length, they confirmed the mythical pathway to be no more than a legend. The Missouri River was one of the main routes for the westward expansion of the United States during the 19th century. The growth of the fur trade in the early 1800s laid much of the groundwork as trappers explored the region and blazed trails. Pioneers headed west en masse beginning in the 1830s, first by covered wagon, then by the growing numbers of steamboats entering service on the river. Former Native American lands in the watershed were taken over by settlers, leading to some of the most long-standing and violent wars against indigenous peoples in American history. During the 20th century, the Missouri River basin was extensively developed for irrigation, flood control and the generation of hydroelectric power. 15 dams impound the main stem of the river, with hundreds more on tributaries. Meanders have been cut and the river channelized to improve navigation, reducing its length by almost 200 miles from pre-development times. Although the lower Missouri Valley is now a populous and highly productive agricultural and industrial region, heavy development has taken its toll on wildlife and fish populations as well as water quality. Course for the Rocky Mountains of Montana and Wyoming, 3 streams rise to form the headwaters of the Missouri River. The longest begins near Browers Spring, 9,100 feet above sea level, on the southeastern slopes of Mount Jefferson in the Centennial Mountains. Flowing west then north, it runs first in Hell Roaring Creek, then west into the Red Rock, swings northeast to become the Beaverhead. It finally joins with the Big Hole to form the Jefferson. The Firehole River originates at Madison Lake in Wyoming's Yellowstone National Park and joins with the Gibbon to form the Madison, while the Gallatin River rises out of Gallatin Lake, also in the national park. These 2 streams then flow north and northwest into Montana. The Missouri River officially starts at the confluence of the Jefferson and Madison in Missouri Headwaters State Park near Three Forks, Montana, and is joined by the Gallatin a mile downstream. The Missouri then passes through Canyon Ferry Lake, a reservoir west of the Big Belt Mountains. Issuing from the mountains near Cascade, the river flows northeast to the city of Great Falls, where it drops over the Great Falls of the Missouri, a series of 5 substantial waterfalls. It then winds east through a scenic region of canyons and badlands known as the Missouri Breaks, receiving the Meres River from the west, then widening into the Fort Peck Lake Reservoir a few miles above the confluence with the Muscle Shell River. Farther on, the river passes through the Fort Peck Dam, and immediately downstream, the Milk River joins from the north, flowing eastwards through the plains of eastern Montana. The Missouri receives the Poplar River from the north before crossing into North Dakota, where the Yellowstone River, its greatest tributary by volume, joins from the southwest. At the confluence, the Yellowstone is actually the larger river. The Missouri then meanders east past Williston and into Lake Sakakawea, the reservoir formed by Garrison Dam. Below the dam, the Missouri receives the Knife River from the west and flows south to Bismarck, the capital of North Dakota, where the Heart River joins from the west. It flows into the Lake Oahe Reservoir just before the Cannonball River confluence, while it continues south, eventually reaching Oahe Dam in South Dakota. The Grand, Moreau and Cheyenne Rivers all join the Missouri from the west. The Missouri makes a bend to the southeast as it winds through the Great Plains, receiving the Niobrara River and many smaller tributaries from the southwest. It then proceeds to form the boundary of South Dakota and Nebraska, then, after being joined by the James River from the north, forms the Iowa-Nebraska boundary. At Sioux City, the Big Sioux River comes in from the north. The Missouri flows south to the city of Omaha, where it receives its longest tributary, the Platte River, from the west. Downstream, it begins to define the Nebraska-Missouri border, then flows between Missouri and Kansas. The Missouri swings east at Kansas City, where the Kansas River enters from the west, and so on into north-central Missouri. To the east of the Kansas City, Missouri receives, on the left side, the Grand River. It passes south of Columbia and receives the Osage and Gasconade Rivers from the south downstream of Jefferson City. The river then rounds the northern side of St. Louis to join the Mississippi River on the border between Missouri and Illinois. Watershed, with a drainage basin spanning 529,350 square miles. The Missouri River's catchment encompasses nearly 1/6 of the area of the United States, or just over 5% of the continent of North America. Comparable to the size of the Canadian province of Quebec, the watershed encompasses most of the central Great Plains, stretching from the Rocky Mountains in the west to the Mississippi River Valley in the east, and from the southern extreme of western Canada to the border of the Arkansas River watershed. Compared with the Mississippi River above the confluence, the Missouri is twice as long and drains an area 3 times as large. The Missouri accounts for 45% of the annual flow of the Mississippi past St. Louis, and as much as 70% in certain droughts. In 1990, the Missouri River watershed was home to about 12 million people. This included the entire population of the U.S. state of Nebraska, parts of the U.S. states of Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming, and small southern portions of the Canadian provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan. The watershed's largest city is Denver, Colorado, with a population of more than 600,000. Denver is the main city of the Front Range urban corridor, whose cities had a combined population of over 4 million in 2005, making it the largest metropolitan area in the Missouri River Basin. Other major population centers, mostly located in the southeastern portion of the watershed, include Omaha, Nebraska, situated north of the confluence of the Missouri and Platte Rivers; Kansas City, Missouri; Kansas City, Kansas, located at the confluence of the Missouri with the Kansas River; and the St. Louis metropolitan area, situated south of the Missouri Missouri River just below the latter's mouth, on the Mississippi. In contrast, the northwestern part of the watershed is sparsely populated. However, many northwestern cities, such as Billings, Montana, are among the fastest growing in the Missouri Basin, with more than 170,000 square miles under the plow. The Missouri River watershed includes roughly 1/4 of all the agricultural land in the United States, providing more than a third of the country's wheat, flax, barley and oats. However, only 11,000 square miles of farmland in the basin is irrigated. A further 281,000 square miles of the basin is devoted to the raising of livestock, mainly cattle. Forested areas of the watershed, mostly second growth, total about 43,700 square miles. Urban areas, on the other hand, comprise less than 13,000 square miles of land. Most built-up areas are located along the main stem and a few major tributaries, including the Platte and Yellowstone rivers. Elevations in the watershed vary widely, ranging from just over 400 feet at the Missouri's mouth to the 14,293-foot summit of Mount Lincoln in central Colorado. The river itself drops a total of 8,626 feet from Browers Spring, the farthest source. Although the plains of the watershed have extremely little local vertical relief, the land rises about 10 feet per mile from east to west. The elevation is less than 500 feet at the eastern border of the watershed, but is over 3,000 feet above sea level in many places at the base of the Rockies. The Missouri's drainage basin has highly variable weather and rainfall patterns. Overall, the watershed is defined by a continental climate with warm, wet summers and harsh, cold winters. Most of the watershed receives an average of 8 to 10 inches of precipitation each year. However, the westernmost portions of the basin in the Rockies as well as southeastern regions in Missouri may receive as much as 40 inches. The vast majority of precipitation occurs in winter, although the upper basin is known for short-lived but intense summer thunderstorms such as the one which produced the 1972 Black Hills flood. Through Rapid City, South Dakota, winter temperatures in Montana, Wyoming and Colorado may drop as low as -60 degrees Fahrenheit, while summer highs in Kansas and Missouri have reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit at times. As one of the continent's most significant river systems, the Missouri's drainage basin borders on many other major watersheds of the United States and Canada. The Continental Divide, running along the spine of the Rocky Mountains, forms most of the western border of the Missouri watershed. The Clark Fork and Snake River, both part of the Columbia River Basin, drained the area west of the Rockies in Montana, Idaho and western Wyoming. The Columbia, Missouri and Colorado River watersheds meet at Three Waters Mountain in Wyoming's Wind River Range. South of that, the Missouri Basin is bordered on the west by the drainage of the Green River, a tributary of the Colorado, then on the south by the main stem of the Colorado. Both the Colorado and Columbia rivers flow to the Pacific Ocean. However, a large and erratic drainage called the Great Divide Basin exists between the Missouri and Green watersheds in western Wyoming. This area is sometimes counted as part of the Missouri River watershed, even though its waters do not flow to either side of the Continental Divide. To the north, the much-lower Laurentian Divide separates the Missouri River watershed from those of the Old Man River, a tributary of the South Saskatchewan River, as well as the Souris, Cheyenne, and smaller tributaries of the Red River of the North. All of these streams are part of Canada's Nelson River drainage basin, which empties into Hudson Bay. There are also several large endorheic basins between the Missouri and Nelson watersheds in southern Alberta and Saskatchewan. The Minnesota and Des Moines rivers, tributaries of the upper Mississippi, drain most of the area bordering the eastern side of the Missouri River basin. Finally, on the south, the Ozark Mountains and other low divides through central Missouri, Kansas and Colorado separate the Missouri watershed from those of the White River and Arkansas River, also tributaries of the Mississippi River. Major tributaries, over 95 significant tributaries and hundreds of smaller ones feed the Missouri River, with most of the larger ones coming in as the river draws close to the mouth. Most rivers and streams in the Missouri River basin flow from west to east, following the incline of the Great Plains. However, some eastern tributaries such as the James, Big Sioux and Grand River systems flow from north to south. The Missouri's largest tributaries by runoff are the Yellowstone in Montana and Wyoming, the Platte in Wyoming, Colorado and Nebraska, and the Kansas Republican, Smoky Hill and Osage in Kansas and Missouri. Each of these tributaries drains an area greater than 50,000 square miles, and has an average discharge greater than 5,000 cu foot per second. The Yellowstone River has the highest discharge, even though the Platte is longer and drains a larger area. In fact, the Yellowstone's flow is about 13,800 cu foot per second, accounting for 16% of total runoff in the Missouri basin and nearly double that of the Platte. On the other end of the scale is the tiny Roe River in Montana, which at 201 feet long is one of the world's shortest rivers. The table on the right lists the 10 longest tributaries of the Missouri, along with the respective catchment areas and flows. Length is measured to the hydrologic source, regardless of naming convention. The main stem of the Kansas River, for example, is 148 miles long. However, including the longest headwaters tributaries, the 453-mile Republican River and the 156-mile Arikari River, brings the total length to 749 miles. Similar naming issues are encountered with the Platte River, whose longest tributary, the North Platte River, is more than twice as long as its main stream. The Missouri's headwaters above Three Forks extend much farther upstream than the main stem. Measured to the farthest source at Browers Spring, the Jefferson River is 298 miles long. Thus, measured to its highest headwaters, the Missouri River stretches for 2,639 miles. When combined with the lower Mississippi, the Missouri and its headwaters form part of the fourth longest river system in the world, at 3,745 miles. Discharge by discharge, the Missouri is the 9th largest river of the United States, after the Mississippi, St. Lawrence, Ohio, Columbia, Niagara, Yukon, Detroit, and St. Clair. The latter two, however, are sometimes considered part of a strait between Lake Huron and Lake Erie. Among rivers of North America as a whole, the Missouri is 13th largest, after the Mississippi, Mackenzie, St. Lawrence, Ohio, Columbia, Niagara, Yukon, Detroit, St. Clair, Fraser, Slave, and Coxsackie. As the Missouri drains a predominantly semi-arid region, its discharge is much lower and more variable than other North American rivers of comparable length. Before the construction of dams, the river flooded twice each year, once in the April rise, or spring fresh, with the melting of snow on the plains of the watershed, and in the June rise, caused by snow melt and summer rainstorms in the Rocky Mountains. The latter was far more destructive, with the river increasing to over 10 times its normal discharge in some years. The Missouri's discharge is affected by over 17,000 reservoirs with an aggregate capacity of some 141 million acre-feet. By providing flood control, the reservoirs dramatically reduce peak flows and increase low flows. Evaporation from reservoirs significantly reduces the river's runoff, causing an annual loss of over 3 million acre-feet from main stem reservoirs alone. The United States Geological Survey operates 51 stream gauges along the Missouri River. The river's average discharge at Bismarck, 1,314.5 miles from the mouth, is 21,920 cu/foot per second. This is from a drainage area of 186,400 square miles, or 35% of the total river basin. At Kansas City, 366.1 miles from the mouth, the river's average flow is 55,400 cu/foot per second. The river here drains about 484,100 square miles, representing about 91% of the entire basin. The lowermost gauge with a period of record greater than 50 years is at Herman, Missouri, 97.9 miles upstream of the mouth of the Missouri, where the average annual flow was 87,520 cu/foot per second from 1897 to 2010. About 522,500 square mi, or 98.7% of the watershed, lies above Herman. The highest annual mean was 181,800 cu/foot per second in 1993, and the lowest was 41,690 cu/foot per second in 2006. Extremes of the flow vary even further. The largest discharge ever recorded was over 750,000 cu/foot per second on July 31, 1993, during a historic flood. The lowest, a mere 602 cu/foot per second, caused by the formation of an ice dam, was measured on December 23, 1963. Upper and Lower Missouri River. The Upper Missouri River is north of Gavin's Point Dam, the last hydroelectric dam of 15 on the river, and it's just upstream from Sioux City, Iowa. The Lower Missouri River is the 840 river miles until it meets the Mississippi just above St. Louis. The Lower Missouri River has no hydroelectric or lock-in dams, but it has a plethora of wing dams that enable barge traffic by directing the flow of the river into a 200-foot wide, 12-foot deep channel. These wing dams have been put in place and maintained by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and there currently are no plans to construct any lock-in dams to replace these wing dams on the Missouri River. See also, List of locks and dams of the Upper Mississippi River, List of locks and dams of the Ohio River. Geology. The Rocky Mountains of southwestern Montana at the headwaters of the Missouri River first rose in the Laramide orogeny, a mountain-building episode that occurred from around 70 to 45 million years ago. This orogeny uplifted Cretaceous rocks along the western side of the Western Interior Seaway, a vast shallow sea that stretched from the Arctic Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico, and deposited the sediments that now underlie much of the drainage basin of the Missouri River. This Laramide uplift caused the sea to retreat and laid the framework for a vast drainage system of rivers flowing from the Rocky and Appalachian Mountains, the predecessor of the modern-day Mississippi watershed. The Laramide orogeny is essential to modern Missouri Missouri River hydrology, as snow and ice melt from the Rockies provide the majority of the flow in the Missouri and its tributaries. The Missouri and many of its tributaries cross the Great Plains, flowing over or cutting into the Ogallala Group and older mid-Cenozoic sedimentary rocks. The lowest major Cenozoic unit, the White River Formation, was deposited between roughly 35 and 29 million years ago and consists of claystone, sandstone, limestone, and conglomerate, channel sandstones and finer-grained overbank deposits of the fluvial Arikari group were deposited between 29 and 19 million years ago. The Miocene age Ogallala and the slightly younger Pliocene age Broadwater Formation deposited atop the Arikari group, and are formed from material eroded off of the Rocky Mountains during a time of increased generation of topographic relief. These formations stretch from the Rocky Mountains nearly to the Iowa border and give the Great Plains much of the gentle but persistent eastward tilt, and also constitute a major aquifer. Immediately before the Quaternary Ice Age, the Missouri River was likely split into three segments: an upper portion that drained northwards into Hudson Bay, and middle and lower sections that flowed eastward down the regional slope. As the Earth plunged into the Ice Age, a pre-Illinoisan glaciation diverted the Missouri River southeastwards towards its present confluence with the Mississippi and caused it to integrate into a single river system that cuts across the regional slope. In western Montana, the Missouri River is thought to have once flowed north then east around the Bear Paw Mountains. Sapphires are found in some spots along the river in western Montana. Advances of the continental ice sheets diverted the river and its tributaries, causing them to pool up into large temporary lakes such as Glacial Lakes, Great Falls, Musselshell and others. As the lakes rose, the water in them often spilled across adjacent local drainage divides, creating now abandoned channels and coulees including the Shonk and Sag, 100 miles long. When the glaciers retreated, the Missouri flowed in a new course along the south side of the Bear Paws, and the lower part of the Milk River tributary took over the original main channel. The Missouri's nickname, the Big Muddy, was inspired by its enormous loads of sediment or silt, some of the largest of any North American river. In its pre-development state, the river transported some 175 to 320 million short tons per year. The construction of dams and levees has drastically reduced this to 20 to 25 million short tons in the present day. Much of the sediment is derived from the river's floodplain, also called the meander belt. Every time the river changed course, it would erode tons of soil and rocks from its banks. However, damming and channeling the river has kept it from reaching its natural sediment sources along most of its course. Reservoirs along the Missouri trap roughly 36.4 million short tons of sediment each year. Despite this, the river still transports more than half the total silt that empties into the Gulf of Mexico. The Mississippi River Delta, formed by sediment deposits at the mouth of the Mississippi, constitutes a majority of sediments carried by the Missouri.